The Scarlet Report is hosted by a die-hard Manchester United fan. So everything that I post on this channel has to be relevant to Manchester United. Well, yesterday, while I was watching Manchester City versus Arsenal, a great game for the neutrals, I had this great idea. What if I analyzed Manchester City tactically from the prism of a Manchester United fan? Keeping in mind the context of our upcoming FA Cup final against the noisy neighbors. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what makes Manchester City such tough opponents, and what are some of their weaknesses that we could exploit in June 3rd? Without any further ado, let's analyze. So, ladies and gentlemen, in this video analysis, we are gonna look at three things. The first one is, what is the one thing that you should never, ever do against Pep Guardiola's Manchester City? The second thing is, how does Pep Guardiola's Manchester City actually assert dominance over you? And then the third part is going to be, how do you actually break that spell of dominance and hurt Manchester City? So here in this game between Manchester City and Arsenal, actually Arteta used a similar setup to the one that Erik Ten Hag used against Manchester City at Old Trafford. 2-1 win at Old Trafford by having two of his midfielders, in this case, Odegaard and Xhaka, marking Manchester City's two deepest midfielders, Gundogan and Rodri, as well as Gabriel Jesus, who is tasked by cutting these passing lanes between the centre-backs and the midfielders, and between the centre-backs and themselves. However, what Manchester United had in composure and focus and experience, Arsenal lacked. This is a young Arsenal team. They are too eager and they were naive. They made a big mistake because what happens is, as you can see, Odegaard over here, too eager. He goes in heavy and aggressive on the press against Ruben Dias. Now, as you can see, he's being followed by 4 Arsenal players. But this is extremely dangerous because you have 4 Arsenal players over here. There are only 6 Arsenal players that are left. So, of course, there's going to be huge gaps for Manchester City to exploit. But you're supposed to be compact. Deep, narrow, and compact against a team like Manchester City. Don't give them space. Now, Manchester City here, John Stones, is going to show another key feature of how Manchester City beat the press. And it's actually the main reason why I was excited about Wout Weghorst. Is because when you have a big man like Erling Haaland, you can actually play long and simply bypass the opposition's press. So the ball goes towards Haaland. And as you can see here, we do have an unfair matchup. You have Partey, who this season has been great for Arsenal, let's face it. But Kevin De Bruyne is a devil. You don't want Kevin De Bruyne and your defensive midfielder in acres of space like this because Kevin De Bruyne is going to do him dirty. So what happens here now is that in this whole area right here, where you were supposed to have at least 2 or 3 Arsenal midfielders, there's only 1 Arsenal midfielder in a one-on-one situation against the best attacking midfielder in the league, probably one of the best attacking midfielders in the world. The ball drops to Erling Haaland, great hold-up play, and now Kevin De Bruyne is running past Partey, great off-the-ball movement. He has seen the opportunity, which is this space over here. Haaland brings the ball down, passes it to De Bruyne, and at this stage it's game over. A player of the quality of De Bruyne with the center backs, walking back. There's no way they can catch him, and what a finish. Great goal. But this goal was lost because of that Odegaard mistake. You don't go aggressive on Man City, especially early in the game. This was in the 6th minute. Bide your time, play compact and deep. Now, let's look at how Manchester City press, because it is actually amazing. I've learned a lot from this game tactically because Pep Guardiola really, he's the trendsetter when it comes to tactics and everybody else is following. Erik Ten Hag, Mikel Arteta, all of these guys are pretty good tactically, but Pep Guardiola is next level. He's their mentor in many aspects. So, let's give the guy the respects that he deserves. So, against Arsenal, Pep Guardiola used actually a 4-4-2 shape, as you can see here, with Kevin De Bruyne and Haaland playing as the 2 strikers who press aggressively on the front, and then Grealish, Gundogan, Rodri, and Bernardo Silva, forming a bank of 4 with the other 4 center-backs forming another bank of 4. However, this is actually very similar to the way Diego Simeone used to set up his classic Atletico Madrid team. But the difference between Pep Guardiola and Simeone is what we're going to see in a minute. So, now, the ball comes in, Arsenal trying to keep the ball, passing it around. Of course, as you can see, Manchester City's shape, changed a little bit. But of course, here, John Stones is coming to pressurize Gabriel Jesus. Now what's going to happen really blew my mind when I saw it happening. So here what happens is this. Bernardo Silva, a winger, an attacking midfielder, is now actually covering as right back. So it's like a beehive. Manchester City, the way they press is like a beehive. It's alive. It's alive. A lot of things are happening. They communicate telepathically. And everybody is aware of what it is that they need to do. So now we find ourselves in this shape. Again, as you can see, a flat 4-4-2, but with John Stones as the right winger, Bernardo Silva as the right back, and Kyle Walker as the right-sided center back. So basically, the reason why this press is so effective is because they can press aggressively, knowing full well that one of your teammates is actually going to cover for you. So even if you end up with your right-sided center back, pressurizing the left-sided center back in a left back position, it doesn't matter because your right winger and your right back are actually going to communicate and find a way to actually plug the holes that need to be plugged. And this is extremely hard to deal with when it comes to the opposition. But of course, no system is perfect. Every system has its weaknesses, and we're going to talk about the weaknesses of this Manchester City system. But anyway, as you can see here, this is extremely difficult for Arsenal to deal with. They can't see any way through these two banks of four, right? Not only that, but as you can see here, Arsenal are starting to get hints of what it is that they need to do. But I don't think that they were drilled. And I know that it's kind of, arrogant from me to say, me who is not a professional football coach or a football manager, but they seem confused. I don't think that Arteta actually saw this. I don't think that Arsenal properly scouted Manchester City, because what you want actually is you want to exploit this space right here between the lines and between the positions over here. You want to exploit these spaces right here. So Granit Xhaka or Zinchenko, or ideally both, should have been actually making moves in here where Gabriel could have actually found them. Actually, I think that for us, if we play Manchester City and if they play this shape against us, I think playing Dalot in this position would be great because he's right-footed. So when he's in this kind of positions, he can actually naturally pass a ball in between the line, unlike Gabriel, who is left-footed. And so if you have Christian Eriksen, probably even someone like Bruno Fernandes, coming into these areas, that could actually cause Manchester City some problems. But I'm surprised that Arsenal were not actually able to exploit these spaces over here. So anyway, this didn't come too much for Arsenal. Manchester City were pretty well disciplined, very good with their pressing. Now let's look at another feature of the way Manchester City press with this 4-4-2. This also blew my mind. What they do, these guys, oh my God, Pep Guardiola really is really creative with his tactics. Manchester City are all about creating overloads. This is why every time we play against Manchester City, it feels like they're playing with 12 men. They're not, they're playing with 11 men, but they're very good at creating overloads. So let's see how they do that. Now here, as you can see, Arsenal in their own half, they have 6 players over here, and Manchester City also has 6 players, the 2 strikers, as you can see here, as well as the 4 midfielders in that 4-4-2 shape. So there is always one-on-one situation, and that's pretty much easy to deal with for Manchester City. Gundogan right here being a great captain, pointing to the right directions, directing his teammates. Ruben Dias actually pushing quite high over here. This is also another reason why Pep Guardiola likes to play Akanji at left back, because he can just play as a center back as well in order to cover for John Stones, Laporte, or Ruben Dias whenever they go high like this to create numerical superiority and overloads. But as you can see, nobody cares about Xhaka over here. Nobody does, because it doesn't matter. The ones that matter are these Arsenal players over here. The ones who are here, like Gabriel and Xhaka, they don't matter at all. And as you can see in this sequence right here, these Arsenal players cannot get the ball. It's checkmate. So Arsenal need to find a different solution. So what they're going to do, of course, through their goalkeeper Ramsdale, they're going to go back to the left-hand side. But what happens, as you can see, Bernardo Silva now, who did not care about Saka earlier, now cares, because the ball is going to the left-hand side. So now the one who doesn't matter is Ben White on the right-hand side. Pressing, coming in, and then here you find yourself again in a 2v2 situation, but even Zinchenko soon is going to be rendered useless. The ball goes long, and then Kyle Walker is there. So Manchester City, they don't care about marking everyone. What they do is that their 4-4-2 shapes keeps on moving between the left-hand side and the right-hand side wherever the ball is. And that allows them to create overloads. This is why it feels that they are playing with 12 men, that their players are everywhere. It's because they are shifting. They are sliding between right side and left side, wherever the ball is. And that's how they create numerical superiority. If you play against Manchester City, you have to keep moving. Now, interestingly enough, Arsenal in this game, they actually found the antidote a few times, but they were not able to capitalize on it and to do it quite often, because I think that they mostly stumbled upon it. They did not have a clear pattern of play in order to exploit those Manchester City weaknesses. So let's have a look here. Obviously, Holden is free. Zinchenko finds him. Beautiful pass. Now, there is a lot of urgency here in the way Arsenal are playing, so this actually doesn't give much time for Manchester City to reposition themselves. As you can see, again, 4-4-2 shape from Manchester City. But the key here is this. Bukayo Saka, look where he's coming. He's coming deep behind that midfield line that Manchester City has. So he's between the midfielders and the defenders. Not only that, he's also in that half space in between the left-sided central midfielder and the left winger. And these spaces are very hard to defend against. And then here he's making himself available for a pass from Holden, which he's gonna get. He gets the pass from Holden. Now, of course, Martinelli, we're going to come back to him in a minute. He's making a very smart run over here. But what you get is, you get both Saka and Martinelli, two of Arsenal's most dangerous, most exciting players. And both of them are behind the midfield line and they are running at the defensive line. So here, Arsenal were able to crush Manchester City's way of pressing with that 4-4-2 position. The only problem is that it did not happen often enough. So here, Saka gets the ball. Gabriel Jesus is too wide. If he was a little narrower, this could have been a goal for Arsenal. This could have been 1-0 Arsenal, actually. Great cross. He was a little too far. Here we can actually see much clearer Martinelli's run. This was actually a very good run for him to stay onside. The Saka positioning himself in between the midfield and the defense. As you can see, nobody can mark him. This is actually one of the weaknesses of putting pressure on the opposition with the 4-4-2 formation, is that when playing with two banks of four, you leave these spaces in between the strikers and the midfielders and the defenders. It's a horizontal system that does not allow much for verticality. And Arsenal, unfortunately for them, they were not able to exploit it as often as they should have. Otherwise, it could have led to them having a much better result. Now, another way that Arsenal were actually able to beat this press is with using the principle of pass and move. Just pass the ball and move into empty space. Here, Reece Nelson, who has been quite impressive in his cameo in this game, comes in. He wants to get in behind this midfield line over here. He's going to use Partey. Great pass and move, 1-2. Now he's already taken out these four Man City players over here. Now, this was also checkmate because he has Zinchenko. He could have used him, but he chose to go individually. Great dribble, still went through. Amazing, very good. And again, now what you have is a situation where you have 5 Arsenal players running at 3 Manchester City's defenders. Of course, Arsenal were not able to exploit this and turn it into a goal, but still, Reece Nelson, again, showed one of the best ways that you can beat this Manchester City press. And now, the one way that Arsenal were able to use to not only break the press, but also to score a goal, and it was a really beautiful goal by one of my favorite players, Leandro Trossard. I would have loved to have him at Manchester United. But anyway, what Leandro Trossard here is going to do is textbook football tactics. It's what we call a third man run. What a third man run is when a player makes a run, even though he's not really directly involved in a sequence. So here, the ones who are involved are Jorginho and Reece Nelson. Trossard is wide over here. He's not really dangerous. What he's going to do is passes the ball to Reece Nelson, and now he starts moving. Now, what happens is that the Manchester City players are focused on these two right here, Jorginho and Reece Nelson. But nobody's paying attention to this half space over here where Trossard is making the run. Really smart player, really smart run. And as you can see, the Manchester City defense is static in a line. They are ill prepared to actually deal with this Trossard threat. So what's going to happen now? Through ball towards Trossard, who then passes it to Holden, and that's 1 goal for Arsenal. Now, as you can see from this game, Arsenal actually, they had the right idea. But like I said earlier, I don't think these were rehearsed patterns. I think that they stumbled upon them. It was more instinctive. But had they actually practiced these patterns of play, they could have actually beaten Manchester City. And this could actually be a blueprint for us to beat Manchester City when we eventually meet them in the FA Cup final. Okay, so now let's see how this can actually be applied in the FA Cup final against Manchester City at Wembley. Now, here, please, guys, don't mind the names of the players or the numbers. Just, 10 red dots versus 10 blue dots to kind of illustrate what I'm trying to say here. So what we've learned from the video analysis is that in order for you to beat Manchester City, or at least to make life really difficult for them, you need two things: verticality and third man runs. Now, if we look at this, now you can expect this shape from Manchester United. This is how we play, 4-2-3-1 with a few variations here and there. But in the FA Cup final, you can expect a lineup that is similar to this. So in phases where we have to build up the play, like here, as you can see, Varane has the ball. Manchester City are most likely going to try to press us with, again, this 4-4-2 compact shape, okay? And so in that case, if we play like this, then they're gonna slaughter us, because as you can see from this positioning that we have over here, it's too horizontal. But as we've seen from the video, we need verticality. Now this, we can change it by making a few tweaks. So the first thing, of course, is Aaron Wan-Bissaka. His off the ball movement is amazing. His positioning, anticipation are great. He can actually keep moving and take Grealish away from the danger zone over here. So him, by moving wide and up, he can actually take Grealish with him. Next, Casemiro moves into the center over here, right? With Varane and Luke Shaw, of course, spreading the center back pairs over here in order to make it a little more difficult for De Bruyne and Haaland. Of course, we still have David De Gea as an asset, but I think that Fred and Bruno should actually try to position themselves in behind Rodri and Gundogan. There is no point in them coming deep here to get the ball and try to build up. No, we have to be in between the lines, between the midfield and between the defensive line. The other thing that we need is that our wingers, and especially Anthony, with that left foot, if he can receive the ball on the turn, just as Saka did in that sequence that I showed you here in the half spaces, Anthony can be a great asset. He's actually quite creative, great control of the ball, and also a great passer. And I see potential in him connecting really well with Marcus Rashford in the third man run sequences that we can create and patterns of play. Diogo Dalot comes in as an inverted wingback because, as you can remember, we don't need width. We are not a crossing team, neither are Manchester City. So basically, some of the patterns of play that we can create are quite interesting. So for example, here what's going to happen is that Manchester City are going to have to sacrifice either Gundogan or Rodri to go and mark Casemiro. If they do that, maybe what's going to happen is that Bruno and Anthony are going to become available. I think that Pep Guardiola is much smarter than that. So is Gundogan and so is Rodri. So they will try to kind of block lanes. So they kind of use like one player to kind of block or mark two players and then wait to see whoever gets the ball to go to them. But with Bruno, his smart movement, he can actually move into these areas right here. An example of a third man run could be Fred making a run here. As soon as Varane passes the ball to Bruno, Bruno can pass it to Casemiro, who's moving over here, who can lay it off to Fred. And then now we have bypassed the press. Another example that can be used is Varane straight to Anthony, who gets the ball on the turn. As soon as that happens, Rashford is making a run that is similar to Martinelli. Diagonal run, beating the offside trap into space right here. Anthony with the through ball towards Marcus Rashford. This kind of patterns of play seem kind of basic, but that's exactly what you need against a 4-4-2 team. Manchester City, they are going to allow you space in between the lines, so you have to have players like Bruno, Anthony, Fred. If Martial is injured, you could have Marcus Rashford through the middle, and then you can have Jadon Sancho. You don't want Sancho here against Walker. He's going to eat him alive. Walker is strong and fast. There's no way Sancho is going past him. But Sancho, with his agility and dribbling, if he finds the ball in these kind of places, he can play 1-2s like Reece Nelson in that sequence, or play through balls to Marcus Rashford. And if we do this, we're going to make life extremely, extremely difficult for Manchester City. But if we play in a traditional 4-2-3-1 or even a 4-3-3 that provides a lot of width, no, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Manchester City are not going to care, because what they're going to do is that they'll just start overloading the areas wherever the ball is. If the ball is on the right hand side, you're gonna have like 6 or 7 players swarm in this area, and then Varane to David De Gea to Dalot, and then what's gonna happen is again them going towards the right hand side, and that's it. They're gonna win the ball and they're gonna suffocate us as they've done with Arsenal. So guys, I hope that you've enjoyed this tactical analysis. I'm sorry that it's taken longer than usual, but I have a lot to say on this topic. I had to edit myself and make the video even shorter. But if you enjoy these kind of videos, i.e. previews, how can we beat certain opponents, please make sure to let me know in the comment section below. Up until next time, cheers.